one thing that I'll mention from the Sheikh's presentation, as we say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah, and to our Blog Talk family, also the same. One of the things that stood out for me in the Sheikh's presentation was the ethical position, just setting time, the ethical position that the Muslims come to when you operate on the basis of what Allah has revealed. Because inside that Seerah, as you saw, you heard the whole thing, so no need for me to go over it. But the context of the history, what happened, what was going on in that moment, what happened particularly with the two or few that were told to go out and do reconnaissance. They were told to go out and gather information. But then a situation came up where they had to think on their own about, okay, what should we do? Look at this situation, look at that. Our opportunities here, opportunities there. And okay, they didn't make the right decision according to the Prophet's instruction. And one of the ways, of course, to have made the right decision would have been to do what? Okay. Yeah, just do what the Prophet told you to do. That's not a place where you think on your own in that sense, but it's not something necessary to hold it against them. And as the Sheikh said, this is also one of the things that Allah does. Allah will put you in a situation that will cause you to learn a lesson that you're supposed to learn by the situation as it was structured. And Battle of Badr, Battle of Uhud, in one at least of those battles, Allah said He made an appointment for you that you were sure to keep. Meaning He set it up. It's like even if you had made the appointment yourself, you wouldn't have come as perfectly into the situation that you are in if you had planned it yourself. God is saying, well, this is my appointment. You're going to be where I mean for you to be at the time I mean for you to be there. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? It's God's plan, right? So this was also a part of God's plan, that I'm going to put you in this ethical situation. Because what's going to happen out of this situation is an ethical lesson for all times. You see, so they did what they did, but Allah used what was done to serve an end that He had in mind. And it's the end that's being served just even by what the Sheikh told us today. Right now, today, we need the lesson that was learned from that situation. So it was a universal scenario that was set up to be a part of the totality of revelation. So this is a very important aspect for us to understand the role that the Seerah plays in living al-Islam and coming into the mind that al-Islam is intended to bring you into. And that mind is a mind of is an ethical mind, meaning that the fine line that has to be drawn in light of the global players, games, injustices, conflicts that we face every day today. The only way to be saved from the moral, ethical, spiritual, psychic collapse that can happen in those circumstances is that you have to have a go-to, let's call it philosophy, ideology, just for the sake of what I'm trying to get to say. Meaning like, okay, what do I do in this situation? Okay, well, you need to have some place that you regularly refer to say, well, where's my universal Swiss knife mindset? You know what I'm saying? This calls for a corkscrew. This calls for a blade. This calls for a screwdriver. Well, that's what al-Islam is when you understand it. And that's what the Quran is. That's what the life example of Prophet Muhammad is. And those things, the Hadith and the Quran understood inside the Seerah of the Prophet gives you the greatest likelihood of making the right decision in these ethically challenging times. I mean, how many people are deciding, I'm with ISIS, yeah, kill them all, is that Allah's revelation? Is that the Prophet's model? But again, well, what do you do with what we know is being done, in covert operations by Britain, U.S., Israel. We know y'all doing it. The books are all written. The word is all out. Wiki and leaked and everything. It's done. We know that. Okay, but still, you have an Islamic responsibility to do what Allah has ordered for you to do. You want to make the right decision in light of what Allah has revealed. So one of the things that facilitates making the right decision is seeing the Quran, the reports of the Prophet in the context of the Seerah. Because, inshallah, I hope you felt, and I felt very much as the Sheikh spoke about it, you could really feel God personally involved. You understand what I'm saying? God is saying, it's like Allah, and He is the judge, right? And I think he said in English during the presentation what that is, that God is the best of judges. Is not God the best of judges? Okay, so God is judging the situation. They did that and you did that. And God is saying, right. Speaking to the other guy. Right. They did what they did. And it was a big, big wrong. This Quran. But let me put an urban touch on it. But hold up. Isn't that what we say? Hold up. We say, that ain't the end of my comments to you. But let's look at what you did. You did this and that and that. And so what you did amount to something even bigger than and it was big. But what you did was bigger. So yes, I indict them, but the indictment for you is even bigger. Not you. Everybody.
I've been indicted.
You've been indicted before, but you're free now.
Yeah, exactly.
I set you free. I love his sense of humor. Okay, moving on. So you and I can have that kind of fluency, that kind of relationship, that kind of sense, that kind of feel for the Prophet and for Allah in your life. Another important thing that for me that came out of what the Sheikh said, and everybody gets what they will. He made a point that no, the Prophet didn't get everything that he asked for. It wasn't like a miracle after a miracle. Every time he had a need, it wasn't automatically met. Sometimes the Prophet didn't get what he wanted to get in that moment. So, and you should understand that then Allah doesn't work that way. Just because you're the Prophet, or just because you are favored, just because you are blessed in area X, Y, or Z, it doesn't mean that every time you need a blessing, that blessing is going to be there. You have to be capable, willing, exposed to as well losses and suffering, even as a believer in God, because that also has the effect of keeping your faith, keeping your form, structuring your temperament and your disposition and psychology, continuing to shape it. So much to be said on that. But I'll just say that, and then we move on to the paper. That's just as an idea. And I do. I want to finish to give you an opportunity to have more feedback. So let's go to the sheet. Those of you who get it by way of email, then you have this email. These are just a couple of short pieces from Imam Waritheen Muhammad on the issue of jihad. And I want you to hear this in the context of what has already been said, because jihad has its place, and the Shaykh has done, of course, an excellent job of explaining the place of jihad in the life of the Muslim, and in addition to which, we are reminded that a fiqh is necessary for every age and place. It's like you cannot, in true form, you cannot just wholesale take what was done, even in the very situations that were described to us in the Seerah today, which was Seerah 35 from Sheikh Yasir Khadi. You can't just take that whole situation and overlay it strictly and explicitly to situations that you can extract the ma'ruf, you can extract the valuable principle, the ethical guidance from that, but you have to articulate it and apply it in the context that you live in. Okay? So that's another case where you have to have a fiqh, a religious understanding, a legal reasoning methodology for your place and time. And that is the role of your scholars, the role of the people who, in fact, it gives us opportunity, and I want you to take this out of the racial context, but I'll introduce it to you in the racial context, but it's only to just give you a frame for understanding. I talked about ethics, right? Ethics is when you have to make a decision between two good things or two bad things, right? You have, okay, both, just like those Shuaibe, they were in an ethical dilemma. It's the sacred months. It's about sunset time. It is, here's the caravan. They're loaded. They're vulnerable. We're here. Timing seems so right for it, but the Prophet told us to gather information. We have not been instructed to do it, and we have not been instructed not to do it, but a part of us knows that we shouldn't do it. That's why we're hesitating, and that's why it's an ethical dilemma. So, two good things, two bad. Obey the Prophet, take an opportunity. What should we do? Ethics is what decides ethical dilemmas for you. Okay? So ethically, when you get this term ethnicity, I take it as you put an N between the ETH and the ICS, put nationality, put nation inside that, and you get ethnicity. Ethnicity, right? So we can talk about Africans, right? But you go to different African nations, you're going to have different ethics. The ethics of Central African Republic is not the ethics of Sierra Leone, let's say. The ethics of Sudan is not the ethics of Morocco, right? And so they're also separate nations as well. So the ethnicity also carries in it the ethics, the national ethics. Now just take national as a specific term out of it, and so you understand that ethnicity, you understand what I'm saying, that the source of ethnicity is your national ethics. See, so Americans, to be an American is an ethnicity in the sense that I'm saying, right? There's a national ethic in America, and so therefore America, to be an American is an ethnicity. Now, I'm saying for us as Muslims, Muslim is also an ethnicity. This is how people from different racial, geographic backgrounds, they can be the same when they are Muslims. Okay? And the Prophet said, there's no superiority of black over white, white over black, Arab over non-Arab, non-Arab over an Arab. You know, the only distinction is their taqwa, right? That's hadith and also Quran. So when we truly become Muslims, we come out of the particular racial description that the world has given us by their racialization of man, and we come into an entirely different, I'm going to say now, nation. But nation is not the term that we use to describe our aggregation as a global group. How do we describe our aggregation as a global group as Muslims? Ummah, right? So I'm saying that, so a little humor in this too. So now we're going to talk about ethnicity, right? Ethnicity, you know, because you're Muslim. You belong to the Muslim Ummah, and so it's not your ethnicity, it's your ethnicity. Because what guides your ethics is al-Islam. Okay? If you're Muslim, then that's what guides your ethics. So then that's why we have to be fluent in context of our familiarity with the Quran. We have to be fluent in the context of familiarity with the reports of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to be fluent with regard to our familiarity with the Seerah of Prophet Muhammad, because the Seerah of Prophet Muhammad gives us the context, the frame in which we need to interpret and understand Quran and the doings and the approvals of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and your local. This is where it comes back to the jurisdiction, that same in ethnicity. I want you to think in terms of when you accept a scholar to be the one who helps you, because most of us, everyday life and life as it is, etc., and our proclivity will not necessarily give us I'm going to sit down 2 or 3 hours a day and I'm just going to dig into this. I'm just going to dig in this Quran, dig into this Hadith, dig into this Seerah, dig into that. No, some people, that's not your place. But if you have a leader who does that, or a mind that does that for you, that you can count on, well then that's what they're there for. They have that responsibility, not to be responsible for your life, but to at least point you in the right direction or answer some of the questions that should come up for you as a member of your, listen to what I'm saying, ethnicity, right? And that's what they're for. That's what they're for. So the need for I'm going to call it a local fiqh, and I'm not even talking 94605 or something like that. When I say local, I mean geographically. Geographically, America is local. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there has to be a fiqh for America, because there's more similarity circumstantially for Muslims in America than there is for Muslims in any other part of the world right now. There might be some proximity to Muslims in Canada, maybe, but America has a different ethic even than Canada, right? So I hope you understand why that's important, because as we go on to say, I don't want you to hear this as though all of this previous context didn't exist or doesn't exist, because it does. But what the Sheikh was giving us, what the Sheikh was giving us is the universal picture of jihad. And particularly, as he said, I'm being descriptive and not prescriptive. He's an excellent academic. I mean, he said he's an academic. He said he's academic. But for that reason, he's very cautious about what happens to what he says and how he says what he says and how he supports what he says. That's why I really appreciate him. Yeah, we have our subtle differences, but he's working on a different channel for a different purpose. But it provides data for us to use to even support our position. What I say, and it only say to get our fiqh, let's call it, clear. So, alhamdulillah, that's good. Last thing, even those names that he mentioned, alhamdulillah, those are people that I read, am in touch with on a truthdig.com. On truthdig.com, you can basically find all those folks on a regular basis, or they will link you to those people. Yeah, even if you just go with that one, and they can lead you to the rest of them. But that's like a portal to these kind of persons, and they are very, very, very good. Okay, let's move on. So these are commentary from Imam Muhammad, rahimahullah alayhi. So speaking of the purpose for human creation. Allah the Most High says in our holy book, the Quran, I did not create the human beings and the jinn for any purpose except my worship, that is to serve me. Those who will be strongest in struggle, that is in jihad, are strongest in faith. We Muslims believe that if the faith is sound and right, then our situation will be good. But if the faith is not sound and right, then we can expect a life of unhappiness. Allah Most High says in the Quran, the holy universal book which is the same for all Muslims, whether we're in America, in Asia, the Middle East, in Africa, or elsewhere. There are no two Qur'ans. There is only one Qur'an. There are many translations of the Qur'an into different languages, and many people give explanations or comments on the Qur'an, but there is only one Qur'an for all Muslims. Some may know our book by spelling it Koran. Qur'an is the transliteration of the Arabic sound, and he's spelling it in that line, Qur''an. Jihad in the path of Allah refers to struggle. And strive in Allah's path with your wealth and your souls, Qur'an. Dr. Tabibi, in a publication, Firmest Bond, says of jihad, jihad in the path of Allah refers to all around struggle. The Holy Qur'an has clearly pointed out that jihad denotes two kinds of strivings. Striving with the help of God given faculties, both mental and physical, and striving with the help of other resources which man has at his command. This is jihad. The most popular idea and meaning of jihad, especially in the West, where they only hear of one kind of struggle by Muslims, is violent conflict. Consequently, jihad is given the meaning of war. But jihad simply and literally means struggle, hard effort, exerting yourself, making effort that involves sacrifice and hardship. We are in this country, some of us know struggle. We here in this country, some of us know struggle. I call it the struggle of the decent poor. The decent poor in this country know hard struggle. And we have gotten where we are today because of our hard struggle. I'm sure that many of you have come into renewed struggle after becoming Muslim. Our struggle has been and is jihad. We'll go to the other side, but I'll make this comment. A very important tool, if you, again, those who are interested in, okay, you Muslims who say Imam W.D. Muhammad is your sheikh, he's your alim, he's your scholar, he's your mujaddid, all of you who see him as being great, what makes him that? A lot of things, but one of the key things is that he gives us simple methodology for approaching the sacred sources. He gives us simple methodology, true methodology, not simpleton methodology. Easy. He makes the sacred sources more, at its deepest level, more accessible to people who use the keys that he gives to get into those sacred sources. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, somebody give you a key to the door. I mean, you ain't got to bust it down, right? Or you don't have to be locked out. You have the key, just put the key in the lock, open it up, and you can go inside. See, this is what the Imam has done and does for us. One of those is language, logic, sensitivity. Do not underestimate those simple three words when it comes to study. Wallahi, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. We love the sheikhs, we love the scholars, we love the committed students, we love to see the learning from those who learn from committed scholars and the like. We love to hear what they bring, what they share, the light that comes from what they give. All of them. You can also be in that group, and you don't have to spend 10 years at Medina University. You don't have to spend 10 years at Al-Azhar. Just as the Imam just talked about the Quran is the same everywhere. There's not a different Quran in Medina, and different Quran in Mecca, different Quran in Egypt, and different Quran in East Oakland. Oh, the Quran in East Oakland, it don't operate like the one. Nah, the Quran in East Oakland can do the same thing that the Quran in Mecca does. Huh? But the person from East Oakland has to know how to get into the Quran in order to get anything out of the Quran. And this is the grace of Allah to the decent poor, like the Imam is speaking, that he gives us keys like language, logic, sensitivity. So, Quranic language, and I'm just focusing on just what he said about jihad. Okay, CNN says this about jihad. Fox says this about jihad. Bloomberg says this about jihad. Al Jazeera says this about jihad. And whoever else says whatever they say about jihad. What does God say about the Quran, the jihad? And what did Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about the jihad? And how was jihad exercised in the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad in his seerah? So it doesn't matter what all these other sources say that jihad is. What matters is what Allah said is jihad. Okay, so once you get that, so the Imam, the very fact that he says, let's go back to that sentence. It's at the very end. He says that, but jihad, this last line of the second to the last paragraph, it says, but jihad simply and literally means struggle, hard effort, exerting yourself, making effort that involves sacrifice and hardship. There you are. That's the definition of jihad. That's the language of jihad, right? So then that means when I use that definition, then now what's the logic of that? So you simply ask yourself about that term, jihad, and its meaning. What is the behavioral expectation for me from God when it comes to jihad? That's the question that you have to ask to get the logic. What is the behavioral expectation for me from God when it comes to this word jihad? Well, the Imam said, well, this is what it means. It means struggle, hard effort, exert yourself, make effort that involves sacrifice and hardship. When you do that, you're doing jihad. So do I need to strap on a sword or AK-47 and jump on a tank and go somebody's desert or whatever to say, nah, I'm doing jihad? No, you can do jihad in your living room where you wake up in the morning with your husband, your wife, your children. Man, this is jihad. Takbir! Nah. So, and that struggle can be, and it is, emotional, it's mental. Oh man, okay, he on that today. Okay, she on that today, right? Okay, Bismillah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, Auzu billah, you know, you try to move on, right? That's jihad, right? You don't have to go nowhere to jihad. Jihad is wherever you are. So, okay, so there's the logic. There's the logic. So when it says, well, yu'allimuhum al-kitab wal-hikmah, and he teaches them the science of the book and the logic of living it in your everyday life. That's Imam Muhammad's translation for us of that. The book, there's others say the book and the wisdom. The wisdom is still vague. It's vague. What can I do with that? But if I know that the hikmah means the logic for living the book in my everyday life, I can do something with that. Once I define what logic is. If hikmah means the logic for living the book in my everyday life, there's only one word that I need to get clear on in that sentence. Logic. What is logic? The behavioral expectation in the language. What's the language? Well, read the verse, read the definition of the word. Struggle, exert yourself, make sacrifices, etc. Okay, there you go. So what does it mean? Do that. Do that. With regard to what? Everything. Everything. Job, jihad. Family, jihad. School, jihad. Business, jihad. And it doesn't mean violent confrontation. You have to exert yourself extremely with tolerance, with understanding, with patience. That may be the jihad. Just listen to the person and don't say anything. That's jihad. Okay? All right, so that's language, that's logic, and the last piece, sensitivity. Sensitivity, it means the disposition that comes into you by that language and that logic. So let's go back to what we saw in the Seerah in that particular ethical challenge. Okay? That is what Allah revealed. Allah revealed, said, okay, that's bad. But what you all are doing is worse. So we were just reading those verses, then we look at those statements from God and say, okay, well, what's the behavioral expectation from me from that verse? I'm not looking at the words explicitly, I'm just raising it to your attention what we're talking about. So that means, okay, imagine that we've just finished reading those words. Okay, now I'm looking for the logic, okay? And of these words, what is the behavioral expectation of me based on what I just read? That means that there are levels of wrongdoing. Make sure you don't do a greater wrong than the one that you would seek to indict somebody for. You know, it's like when you point the finger, what does it say? When you point the finger, then you got three fingers pointing back at you, right? So they say the man is talking about the mote in somebody's eye. Now I'm over in the Bible, I don't know that one that well. Where it says, you know, you got a mote. Say what? Yeah, you got a beam in you talking about the dust in somebody else's eye. You got a beam in you can't even see out of one eye for how big it is. But see, that's the ethics of al-Islam. So that means that's the sensitivity you have to have. So before you act in a situation, you, inshallah, you bring that to mind. Look, wait. Before I find fault in this person, let me make sure that my fault in finding fault is not bigger than the fault that I think I'm pointing out in them. See, that's sensitivity. You're sensitive to that character of human interactions. See, taqwa tells you be awake all the time. Taqwa tells you don't be reactive. Consider your words, your actions. Consider the consequences of the move that you're thinking about making. Because if you haven't thought it through, then you may be making a bigger mistake than you think that you are checking. And there's a long story of Omar on that story. Some of you have heard that story. I won't go through it, but Omar he heard some bad things happening inside a household, and then he knocked on the door, nobody answered the door. He went up on the roof and he shouted down, "Hey, what you doing in there?" And they said, "Well, let's look at what you're doing." And this person started ticking off all the wrongs that Omar had done in what he had done. By the Quran. Quran says this, but look what you did. Quran said that, but look what you did. Quran said that, but look what you did. And so Omar said, okay, well, I forgive you. And see, and that's another thing. How can you forgive what Allah has forbidden? So he would have been better off just walking on down the street. Right? But the message is that you have to be careful in the way you decide to act, especially when you're trying to indict somebody else. So that's a sensitivity that we have as Muslims, right? And everything that goes with that, everything radiates outside of that, right? Especially when you look at the idea of the hadith where it says among the most excellent things of a believer's religion is that they, come on, you know that hadith? Among the excellent things, maybe there are many like that, but
a good believer is one that minds his own.
There you go, that's good enough. That's right. Well, stay in your own lane. That's sensitivity, right? So that's it. The best of your religion is